I will call our Finance Committee meeting for July 21st, 2025 to order. Roll call.
Paul Cardarella.
Here.
Jack Heineman.
Here.
Sarah Whitley.
Here.
Chris Zellner.
Here.
Al Dasso.
Here.
Kristen Runge.
Here.
And Tom Wilson.
Here. Okay, first item we have is minutes.
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Next, we have public comment based on, do we have anybody online?
We are not.
We're not online?
We're not live.
Okay, so we're good then. All right, we're good.
We are.
All right, then we'll move on from public comment. Let's go to presentations. Baker Tilly Audit Report Presentation.
So today we have Justin from Baker Tilly, and he will be going over our audit results. And I'm going to share his presentation for those who may not have it handy.
All right, well, thanks for having me. As Renee said, I'm Justin Hoagland. I'm a principal at Baker Tilly, and I oversee the village's audit each year. We do have a separate team that does your utilities that specialize in that. But I do the overall audit. So, first we do plan to issue year statements tomorrow, again, as long as there's no last minute, changes or anything. But before we do that, we always like to come kind of give a brief presentation, go over the reports, as well as some of the financial highlights and see if, you have any questions for me. So first, just want to thank, Renee, Todd, their team. The audit does go about as smooth as it possibly can. Super responsive to our emails and everything, our requests. So again, it always goes super smooth. And one reason it always goes really smooth is because we hardly have any audit entries. And so we had no audit entries this year, anything, that we found that we had to move around. And like I've said in previous years, that is really pretty rare. I probably have maybe 5-10% of my clients that have zero audit entries. The average is probably 15 to 20 that we see at other municipalities. So it is really a stellar job. So thanks to you guys. So the first document I wanted to talk about is the reporting and insights from the 2024 audit. It looks like this. Hopefully everyone has a copy of it. So this document does have a lot of different items in it. If we had any internal control deficiencies, we would note those. Overall, the village does have very good, controls and segregation of duties in place. It has my contact information if you ever need to get a hold of me or have any questions for me in there. Any, recommendations or things like that will be in there as well. And just some other required communication that we need to, give those charged with governance, the committee here. I do want to highlight one thing. Page 12 it looks like this, has audit committee resources on the top. So we do have a link at the top of that page to a Baker Tilly website that is specific for governments and the governmental industry, where we kind of have, trending topics and regulatory updates that we think, committees, boards should be aware of. Those are out there, so feel free to visit that kind of page. Below that link, we do kind of list kind of the three, bigger trending topics that we're seeing in government these days that's impacting governments. The first one we list is funding evaluation and pursuit. Just reminding our clients that there is grant money out there. Make sure you're pursuing it, especially for stuff that you would have been paying for anyway. The village does do, a good job at that already. I know you're working with Baker Tilly on, IRA possible funding for solar and everything like that. With the current administration, we don't know exactly where kind of the federal subsidies and everything will go. If anything, they're probably signaling less to local governments. So again, something just to be aware of and budget for it if necessary. The other one we list is digital transformation. Just making sure that, implementing technologies to streamline and efficient processes, with the whole age of AI upon us, looking at that and whatever can be done, again, to help streamline your processes. Again, you have pretty good processes here already, right? You're not still just in the paper world. A lot, you can pretty much find everything PDF form. But again, there's more and more coming out daily that can kind of be looked into from that standpoint. And kind of with that, the last point we have is around cybersecurity. Unfortunately, this is a real thing. There were multiple municipalities in Wisconsin this year that had their data hacked, stolen, and held for ransom. It happens between small and big places. So again, kind of making sure you have your ducks in a row from an IT side, insurance side, whatever. Again, that's something that we're seeing become more and more common, unfortunately. If you ever want to talk to anyone about any of those three main initiatives, we do have expertise at Baker Tilly that specialize in those specific three areas. Can certainly set up a free phone call to just see, hey, what should we learn more about? More than happy to do that. So just let me know on that. But that's this document. Again, a lot of different information. Definitely recommend the committee read through that. So next, the financial statements themselves, one thing I always like to highlight is our opinion. And so we do issue what's called an unmodified or a clean opinion on your financial statements, similar to prior years, pretty much attesting that, your financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects. So I'll get on that front. And then next, I'm just going to go over the financial highlights here. So if you go to the first page, so this kind of chart at the top is focusing around your general fund balance, and a place I always like to look when kind of assessing the financial health of municipality is your general fund. It's the main operating fund of the village where a lot of your day-to-day transactions run through. And so your fund balance, or a lot of people will call it your equity, is kind of what's displayed here on the chart. It's kind of showing your 2024 levels in blue compared to 2023. And so you'll see that your fund balance is broken down into three different kind of buckets or different types of fund balance. At the bottom here, you have your non-spendable fund balance. It's called non-spendable because it's non-spendable form. A lot of that consists of, or I think maybe all of it is prepaid items that you've technically have already spent the money on. It's just the services relate to 2025. So it's a prepaid. A lot of times we have communities that will have advances from the general fund to another fund where, to float cash to a different fund. If they're not expected to be paid within a year, they go into this non-spendable fund balance because their general fund's not expected to get it back within a year. So that's the non-spendable category. We have your assigned fund balance at 2.3 million. That's really made up of a long laundry list of items. Pages 47 through 48 of your financials will list out those items, but the village can assign funds for different things. A lot of places do it for capital projects they know that are coming down the pipeline. The two biggest components of your assigned fund balance, there is $731,000 assigned for the 2025 budget. So that's where you're kind of budgeting in 2025 to use up a portion of that fund balance, and we have to show it as assigned because you're expected to use it up within a year. And then there's 960,000 of that relates to the sick leave conversion. I'm assuming that's when an individual retires, they can convert their sick leave, right?
Correct. Certain people who were hired prior to a date in 2013 can convert, and all the police that are in the union can convert their unused sick leave at the time of retirement and use that. It gets deposited into an HRA, so they can use that for premiums or health costs or that type of thing. So we have the estimate of that. I think we talked about when we approved the assignments on what we think it'll cost to convert all that sick leave.
Thank you. So those are the big pieces of the assigned fund balance. And then kind of what's left over is that assigned fund balance. There's no restrictions or assignments to it. Again, it can be used or not used at the village's discretion. And so if you scroll down a little bit here, this is a really high level budget to actual of your general fund. And so you'll see your final budget, you essentially expected to use up a little bit over $1 million of that fund balance in 2024, but you actually had a net income of almost $300,000. So again, much better than budgeted in the general fund. Your revenues are about $681,000 better than budget. A big piece of that is investment income was $315,000 or so better than budget. Again, we're pretty much seeing that everywhere. Still kind of live in a high interest rate environment, overall positive market conditions. So that was a big piece of that 681. Licenses and permits were also $170,000 better than budget is the other big piece of that variance. As far as expenditures, again, almost $700,000 better than budget for expenditures. That was really broken down to a bunch of different pieces, which are in your financials. It's page 65 through 66 will show a more detailed breakdown of this budget to actual. But big pieces of that look like elections were way under budget, as well as the assessor expenses were way under budget. But again, it really was a pretty big mix. So
can I just jump in there? So those are two particular line items that we carry over from year to year. So it was under budget because because we had carried over a bunch of the funds from the year before. And the assessor, that'll start going away because we're doing the 5-year level contract. So we were just sort of using up some of the funds that we had on hand from previous years.
In other words, our strategy was to try to have consistent funding levels on an annual basis, so we don't have the funky ups and downs within the budget on those two items over time.
Thanks.
thank you.
That's Todd's like small brain explanation.
Perfect sense.
Hers was the much bigger brain explanation.
So again, did really well, kind of compared to budget in the general fund. The next page. So again, this focuses around that general fund balance that we just talked about, that unassigned piece. And so one ratio we always like to calculate is we take that unassigned piece. Not sure why it says series one. Series one is Waunakee, in orange there. And so we take that unassigned piece, we divide it by your budgeted expenditures, and it comes up with this ratio. So essentially this is saying, again, if you took in no revenues, the village could keep paying keep the lights on, keep paying its bills for about 3.5 months is what that 28.9% comes out to. Again, you can see the village has been pretty consistent the last 4 years here. The blue dots are the median for other municipalities your size in Wisconsin. I know I got questions last year about some more detailed statistics on that. As far as I can go is I checked the mean is very comparable to the median. So not really a big difference there. And I know one question also was, this is kind of showing the 10,000 to 17,500 population range. I checked the next bigger range because you're very close to that kind of tip of that range. And again, if you compared any of those metrics, it's all within 3 to 4% as far as the median, mean, and if you went to a different population range. So again, this is a pretty good indicator of kind of where everything's at. So again, you are a little bit below other municipalities your size in Wisconsin as far as this ratio is concerned. You do have a policy to be within that 20 to 25% range. But again, you've been a little bit above that the last 4 years here. Yeah.
Why are we above? Why are we above the maximum? Is there a reason for that? We've got a minute of max.
So we're going to talk about that a little bit further in the agenda. We're going to talk about that further in the agenda on our policy. That's our guideline, but we have been over that consistently for actually quite a few years, beyond just 4 years. And so we're going to talk about, are there things we should be doing to with that excess? But the short answer is that we do better than the budget. So our budget has historically been conservative, though it's becoming more realistic, but yet if we're leaning on the conservative side. So we usually budget revenues lower, including like investment income. We don't know when the market's going to turn, so we don't maximize that budget line item. And similarly, our departments are really good at staying within their budgets or saving money. So we usually end up a little bit with a net income. But we're going to dive a little more deeply into that later.
So going on to the next page. So this next page is going to focus around debt. We always like to look at debt when assessing the financial health of a municipality. And so this chart at the top, the black line is your geo debt limit, right? You can have up to 5% of your equalized value in geo debt. The lime green line there is your policy for how much geo debt you can have outstanding. So you do have a policy saying you won't take out more than 50% of that state statute limit. And then that orange line is your actual geo debt outstanding. So you can kind of see at the end of 2024, you've used up about 21% of that geo debt capacity. I will say that that's a little bit below average. I would say the average is closer to 30% that I see. So again, you are positioned well as far as debt. Having capacity to borrow if you do need to for future capital projects. So moving on to the next page here. Again, this chart focuses around debt. And one thing we always like to look at is, what percent of your normal routine expenditures do you have to devote to pay off that debt, right? Because if you're using it for debt, can't use it for something else. And so for 2024, 19.2% of your expenditures had to go to service that debt. It's been going down the last couple of years. You can see the black again is the median, pretty close to the mean of other municipalities in Wisconsin. So again, certainly nothing concerning from a debt standpoint as far as how much you have outstanding or how much you're paying each year in debt service. Pretty consistent with other municipalities.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I just want to understand, because it's a little awkward for me to understand what the debt service has to do with non-capital expenditures. And you started off, and I missed that first couple sentences you said, as to why would you measure debt service against non-capital expenditures?
Yeah. So we try to base it based off your routine expenditures. So again, expenditures you're going to have every year. Capital expenditures like doing a road or building a new building are really going to fluctuate greatly, your capital outlay from year to year. So we try to just have a more consistent base of your kind of normal routine expenditures that we're comparing this against versus the capital outlay that can really jump, millions of dollars one way or the other each year. So that's kind of why we can compare it to non-capital expenditures. That's a great question. I've never had someone actually ask that question. So yeah, that's kind of why we do that, if that makes sense. And that's the main highlights I wanted to go over. Again, overall, good financial position for the village. Audit went smooth. Good controls in place and everything. So any questions for me?
Go ahead, Tom.
The thing that we see all the time in a place like Waunakee is that there's not enough staff to monitor things. What are you suggesting anything to other communities about what to do to get rid of that comment? Or is it just something that you feel that needs to be made and that's just the way it is with a community our size?
Is there a specific comment in the report that you're talking about, or you just?
Yeah. Near the end, when you're talking about comments, there's always, if I can.
I think the segregation of duty
Yeah, that
piece.
We must only have like one comment here, right? Because it's always
I
really
think
good.
that's the only one.
Yep.
It's on page of the PDF, page 100 on your page 6. Sorry. Page 6 of your,
Oh, okay. Yep. Yeah, so we just say account reconciliations prepared throughout the year, not being performed by someone independent of processing transactions in the account. So I'm assuming that's Renee.
Yeah, and to a certain I try and review everything that my staff does. They do, they do sometimes reconcile things that they're also involved with, but I'm able to review their stuff. But if I do something, there's nobody I guess, with enough accounting knowledge to review everything that I do. Todd does review journal entries and things like that, but he couldn't review everything.
I'm not worried about it. I'm raising it because it's in like every audit report for every small community around the state. And it
Yeah.
seems like if it's such a standard thing, maybe even something could be inserted. I think you do have something there, but this is just kind of the way it is in small communities, but
Yeah,
that's why I asked, is there something, I know when I was at Westport, I got kind of sick of seeing it.
yeah,
So, and the response was by our auditors, well, we could help you if you just want to send things to us.
okay. I'm not
Well,
reviewing
I
it.
fell into that one, right? So anyway,
Yeah,
that's why I asked the question.
it's a good question. I will say, like, again, I think the village has very good controls in place for your size. We have some communities where the controls that we would list out deficiencies would take up this whole page or more.
Right.
Especially small places. It just doesn't, they'll just have to perform like a cost benefit analysis, and it just doesn't make sense for especially those smaller communities to hire a whole nother person to try to get rid of the points on their audit report, or more importantly, actually have better controls in place at their community. Most places just don't think that's a wise use of another $100,000+.
And that's what I wanted to hear. So that if somebody actually does listen to this, they'll hear that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yep.
Is there an additional level of scrutiny that someone in the administrator's role can add or do to lessen this comment in any way, or?
So a lot of our comments, like, if someone has access to do something, even if they don't, like we have a lot where, smaller municipality where, person reconciling taxes can also collect taxes. They normally aren't the ones collecting the taxes. But if they do once in a while when someone's on break, we always have to have the point if they have the ability to do so. So, again, Todd, if there's a little bit more maybe review somewhere, it sounds like you're already reviewing some stuff or whatnot, you could always lessen it a little bit. But as long as, a Renee or someone has the ability to do something, the ability to get into a bank account or process transactions, even if they don't do it a lot, we always have to have the point, just so it's out there.
Kristen, any questions?
I have no questions. No.
Al?
I do. And I want to start with the last point and agree with Tom that, you get a little bit the same old comment year after year after year about segregation of responsibilities and duties. And specifically, you point to the library, the police, and recreation, where there is decentralized cash collections. So I'm not certain where all this cash is, but the fact that you've stated it's a material weakness tells me there's enough cash involved that someone could abscond with the funds in some way or another. If it's an insignificant control, such that there is very little cash in the village, I would suspect there would be no comment, because the possibility of some kind of defalcation happening within the cash area, it just doesn't happen. But here you point to 3 and you say it's a material, which means the possibility does exist for theft, and is often higher at these locations because of the person frequently involved in most, if not all, aspects of the transaction, lack of segregation duties. So, I'm with Tom a little bit that, so there is enough cash. It's either a standard comment that's being made, or there's enough cash involved that we really need to do something about it, because you've indicated it's a material weakness. And so I guess I want to get your feedback on that when it comes to materiality, and is it an issue?
Yeah, and so as long as I'm understanding the question right, you're talking about page 7, the decentralized cash collections.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's technically under other comments and recommendations, not a material weakness. That's a very common point that we have at almost every place that is collecting cash at somewhere other than a centralized location. Again, library, police stations, if they have parks where they're collecting money in for beer sales or whatever. It's a very common point. But that's actually just under other comments and recommendations. We're not saying, I don't believe that it's a material weakness. We're saying this overall segregation of duties is a material weakness, but not technically the cash collections at those points. Because like you said, it probably is immaterial, the cash that's being collected there, I would assume, with how much people use cash these days, which isn't a lot, if that makes sense.
It does, and again, I'm just stating the higher level, somehow getting rid of that segregation of responsibilities. We believe we have terrific staff um, and I know Renee's doing the best she can with this. So to come up with a clean control letter, I guess, is the ultimate of what we're trying to work for. And I understand the cost benefit and all that kind of stuff. But again, I go back to the fact that you say it's material. And that's what kind of is alarming to me.
Yep.
Because whether it's cybersecurity or whether it's, we all read in the paper every other day, and maybe I focus on it because of my profession, but we read in the paper every day about, people walking off with cash. No, cash is a loose term. So that's the concern I have is there really something we need to worry about?
Because it could happen. That's why one reason, right? It could be material. Something could happen. No one's going to say anything bad about Renee, right? But it could happen with the controls that are in place. We're more than happy to work with the village too, to be like, okay, how can we get rid of this point? Like, what do we have to do to then present it to the committee to be like, okay, do we want to put those actual processes in place to get rid of it? Is it worth that? We're more than happy to kind of work through that.
So let me ask another question. Sorry, Chris. Let me ask another question, and that is, you indicate in a couple of different areas that in regards to governance and in some of those facts, you have you talk to folks about that. And I'm trying to find it and I can't find it, not very successful at it, but if you found something, who do you talk to?
Yeah.
Because we don't have any formal audit committee per se. We don't have any formal group of people that says, oh, auditors, if you find something, you got to go to X,
Mhm.
other than, I don't know if the village president or something like that. I don't know, but there's nothing formalized when it comes to what do you do when you see or want to talk, or what do you do when you want to discuss journal entries? Is it just with Renee and Renee says, I don't want that journal entry this time. So my point is, based on what I've seen in the couple of letters, couple of instances, you indicate that you talk to people. And I'm just trying to figure out, who did you talk to?
Yeah. So we talk to, obviously, Renee. We talk to Todd every year.
Yeah.
Kristen, we call the village president every year to go through them.
Okay.
We'll do like walkthroughs of controls and talk to other individuals at the village as well to see if there's any concerns or things like that, and make sure that the controls are documented. So we do talk to a number of different levels throughout the village each year.
Mhm.
Again, if something came up, it would kind of depend, well, what was it? But we would always usually talk to the administrator as well as the village president as a starting point. Is, if there is something as far as misappropriation of assets or something like that we're seeing, that's kind of the starting point. It then goes to, depending how far it goes to the attorneys and
Yeah,
everything after that.
I understand
So,
all that part, but I just want to know, because we don't have an audit committee.
yeah,
So there's no one.
and a lot of places
independent.
don't, smaller places don't.
There
Yeah.
is no one independent of the process other than Kristen. And she chooses whether to pass on or not pass on information. So that's what I'm getting. Who do you talk to? You've identified those folks, so that's what I expect. I'm done.
Okay.
Paul?
Maybe some questions for clarification. So first and foremost, appreciate what you do here and all the help. However, so I noticed there's a general fund around 6.7 million. And then on page 41 in red, it shows total deposits for approximately what, 38, 39 million? So just, are those additional funds, or is that just representative of something else or investments? Just trying to wrap my head around the difference between the general fund and then the total like liquidity that the village of Waunakee has.
I'm sorry, which pages were you referring to?
Page 41 in red. And it shows deposits and investments.
Is this in the financial statements?
It must be in the board packet, page 41.
It must be.
PDF 41?
Yeah, PDF.
Oh,
Okay, so,
Trying to reference a proper page number, either it's 32 or 46 of 139.
32.
yeah, I'm sorry, I did not have the PDF or
They
the,
have carrying value and bacon investment balance.
Oh, so maybe the cash footnote of the financials, it sounds like.
oh, yeah, okay. So, okay, now I have the right page. Can you ask your question?
Yeah, I just want to
Okay.
get better clarification regarding these totals, right? And so you have the general fund, which is allocated, unallocated funds. And then you have these total balances as well. That goes into investments and additional deposits. Just kind of get additional clarifications regarding these deposits as well.
So the totals on page 32 of the financials in the deposits and investments footnote.
Yep.
That also includes not only the village funds, but it includes the utility funds. So we have to bring those all together in this cash footnote. So and the village is not just the general fund either.
Yep.
Other funds have cash, and the fiduciary fund is the tax collection fund. So all those feed into these larger totals.
Got it.
Because we have to consolidate with the utilities for the footnotes.
Okay.
And sometimes they're broken out, but this one happens to have all of it together, and it doesn't show how much is utility and how much is village.
Okay. And so some of these, the corporate bonds, US treasuries, et cetera, investments could be village or utilities or utilities.
Correct.
Okay. Got it.
So, yeah, there's, they have things that they invest in, and then I have things that I invest in for the village, and then we bring them all together. So off the top of my head, I mean, the village probably has some funds in all of these areas. And the utilities probably also has a combination of these
Okay.
types of investments.
Thank you.
Does that help? Okay.
Good? Any more? Okay, Jack?
I have no comments.
Okay, Sarah?
No comments.
Okay, so thank you for the presentation. I don't have any questions as well. I think they were all pretty much exhausted at this point. So we would look for the recommended motion is to accept the 2024 financial statements and reporting and insights from the 2024 audit draft reports. Do we have that motion?
So moved.
Motion by Kristen Runge,
Second.
second by Paul Cardorella. Any other comments? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, first business item is to discuss and take action on capital asset policy. Renee?
Yes, I was just gonna stop sharing. We wanna get rid of me from the view. Okay, so capital asset policy. As I mentioned in the memo, I was just looking to add a new section to the capital asset policy for bulk purchases. And what I mean by that is our auditor actually recommended that we consider, so if you, like, for example, at the police department where we're doing the addition, I'm assuming we're gonna have to buy a whole bunch more chairs, say, for example. And so in the past, you could record capital assets based on their individual value. So if it was, 100 chairs for $1,000, you would not record any of those chairs because it would be below our threshold. But about 2 years ago, the GASB, the Government Accounting Standards Board, kind of came out with a different interpretation that if you're buying a whole chunk of something together, even though individually they're small, you should capitalize those. And so, so I was looking to add a bulk purchases section to ours, so we didn't have to worry about every little thing that we bought, as recommended by the auditors. So when I was reviewing the capital asset policy, I realized how old it was back from 2003 when GASB 34 first came into play. Some of you know, but that was the standard that changed governmental accounting, and now has been around for a long time. We haven't changed our policy other than we raised the threshold from $1,000 to $5,000. And then most recently, in November, December of last year, I had the board approved raising it to 10,000 because that's kind of the new federal sort of minimum level. And so we capitalize anything over 10,000. So long story short, I then just took a look at the whole policy and tried to refresh it and simplify it because it was originally taken from, another really long 14-page document, and some of it didn't even apply to us. So I just tried to whittle it down. So I'm not changing anything in the policy other than now getting the 10,000 incorporated and then also adding the section for bulk purchases. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Tom?
$100,000 came from the auditors, or is that something recommended somewhere else?
That was what they said. Because, if it's individually over 10,000, no matter what, we're going to capitalize it. But if it's 10 things, or, a huge, again, that would be a lot of chairs or whatever. But maybe computers, if we somehow had the money to replace all the computers all at the same time, we normally wouldn't record those. So.
Paul?
No questions.
Jack?
Questions?
Sarah?
No questions.
Dale?
You're good.
They saved it for you.
Yeah. I understand what you're saying, Renee, and I'm just looking at the policy where it changes to the 100,000 because I can't find, I see the $10,000 reference, but I don't find the $100,000 reference.
Yeah, bulk purchases.
Section 6 on page
123, it's page
123 of the PDF.
Oh, I got it now. The village of capitalized threshold with that.
Pretty simple.
Yeah, I think I'm okay with that. That's fine. I
Okay.
just couldn't find it.
No questions.
Kristen?
No, I'm sorry, no questions. So you looked at me, so I was like,
All right, I have none either at this point, so look for a motion.
Motion to approve is presented.
Motion by Jack
I'll
Heinen,
second. that.
second by Al Desso. Any other questions? Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, next we have discuss and take action on purchasing policy, right?
Yes, so this was one that I've been trying to tackle for a few years because ours, again, is very old. This one was from 1996. And well before I got here, they stopped, say, using purchase orders or actually following the policy. So what I attempted to do here was take, our old policy, what we're currently doing, what best practices are in the industry, and coming up with a comprehensive policy that governs our purchasing. Again, trying to balance, making it difficult or, not making it too difficult for departments to run their departments and getting the thresholds there, but also making sure that we have plenty of accountability and that we follow the state and federal guidelines. So nothing has changed in terms of competitive bidding for construction projects, that type of thing. But it just sort of lays out in a better format what we are doing with our purchasing. So questions?
Paul?
No questions.
Sarah?
No questions.
Kristen?
No questions.
Al?
Question. Am I on? Is this good?
You're good.
Okay. So, and I heard a couple times today from the auditor about, ongoing additional services that they could provide and, that always gets me riled up because you got independence issues, that creep in as to whether or not, a firm that's not only doing your audit, but also doing ongoing consulting services. And at what point is there a conflict of interest, between those two? As well as the software that we use. You've known for many years, I've had trouble with that. So when it comes to, and I know he referenced the Baker Tilly doing some additional work on, I can't remember is it IRA or whatever that act was?
Yes.
Does that fall under this such that, does that need to be competitively priced from other potential buyers or vendors?
So what we did in that case is we searched high and low for anybody that could actually provide that expertise for the solar. And so it was in the board memo at the time, but we asked our WPPI, our utility person, we asked other municipalities, the school district who had done some work, McFarland had done some solar panel work. So in that particular case, we could not find anybody else to get a quote from. And we talked through it with the board because we would have liked to have competition. It did seem kind of high price wise, but we were still netting out more in the grant than we were paying. So they felt it was worthwhile. But that would be more of a sole source kind of situation in this case. We definitely had tried to get other people that could bid on that.
And I appreciate that background, because as you know, I do have a concern of the auditor providing all these consulting services and especially unchecked by competitive bidding process. Plus I'll stop there.
Okay.
I'm
I
okay.
did just want to address, I know, because for obviously many, many years, you've had the concern with the software. Well, Baker Tilly did sell off the software at the end of 2020 or October of 2024. So 2024 was kind of a mixed year, but they are completely independent now of that software. So
Thank you.
Good.
I'm done.
Okay, Tom?
This is just kind of putting in place what has developed over the years and you're just writing it down so that we actually have it somewhere. This is what we're going to
Yes.
do.
yes.
That
is
brilliant.
exactly why, because it's especially when we were getting the ARPA funds and I was trying to make sure we were following all the rules, we just didn't really have it written down very well. It just took me a few years to.
And it sounds
to
like
it.
where Al's talking about certain situations, you could take proposals from people. If you could find people to provide the proposals.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
I think it's really well written. I think you did a really good job because it seems like a lot of places are going to look at this. A lot of communities are going to look at this on your website and say, "I'm just stealing that." It's pretty.
I
good.
kind of stole most of it
There you
from Sun Prairie. I whittled it down and customized it, but
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Jack?
I guess one of the things that I have a concern with is informal quotes. An informal quote may be obtained verbally. I'd prefer, even if it's an informal quote, have it written down so that we understand, exactly, what we're getting into. So if we're having a conversation, how do we document that conversation so that when it comes time to do the work and you get the work done, how do we do that checks and balance to say, yes, you met the requirements that we talked about. So I'd prefer having, even if it's like an email or some type of written trail so that, we get what we say.
Yeah, good point. I think that's somewhat addressed in the definitions of an informal quote. On page 1, it does say, when soliciting an informal quote, the department should maintain documentation of who provided it and when it was obtained.
Mhm.
So, maybe we can come up with a form or something that we would keep on file.
Yeah,
to
I
document
guess,
that.
just in that one section, informal, it says verbal is okay. And,
Okay.
clarifying that and maybe
Do you remember what section that
my
was?
computer just went dead. So
It's on page 126 and it says informal quote. An informal quote may be obtained verbally or by examining published prices. And I think what Jack is saying, it'd be nice to have some kind of, other than the person who verbally took the quote,
Yeah.
from the people actually giving the quote, it'd be written. Not a terrible idea.
yeah. Even if it's in a email format,
Yeah.
so that you get a paper trail.
I know I brought that up when we reviewed the policy together, Renee, and we defaulted to, in fact, the definition, which did address it, but it doesn't mean we can't be extra
Yeah,
clear
yep.
within the body of the policy.
Yep.
Or even, Jack, I suppose, an attempt to get something in writing.
Yeah.
From who you're getting the quote from, at least. Anyway, thanks.
So I don't want to open up a rabbit hole here, to be clear. But since I run something that is a little part village, not all village within our 4th of July celebration, fireworks are generally over $25,000. So is that something that would require for something like that in a subcommittee situation like that, a formal bid annually based on the policy?
Just reading through the wording here.
And would it matter since those are largely donor funded? Yeah.
That's my question. I'm not sure of that since we're discussing it here. I don't want to
Yeah.
install a policy that
Who's
makes it
buying the
difficult.
fireworks? Who buys them?
Technically, everything comes into the village and the village is paying for it from the donation.
Part of it, we have said that, this year we had, I forget how much in the budget, and that was, could be construed as being for the fireworks. I'm not sure. I might have to give that a little more thought. Todd, do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm reading through it just like you are.
Chris, are there specific vendors that you go to, or is it the same vendor every year, or?
So we've had the same vendor based on price and safety. You look at the safety, it's the biggest thing as far as we're concerned. So the cost fluctuates in there, but
I saw that.
we had bidding in the very beginning. And we took the low bid the first year and found that that was not the greatest thing to do
Well, he's explaining.
for the event from a safety and show experience. So, but that was well before the village actually put funds in towards it. So I just want to make sure we're doing that all correct. So Renee just needs to have, I just need to have guidance when we get to that.
And it does seem like you could follow for something like that. You can follow an RFP project or proposal, and you could get other proposals from people. You get a proposal on the fireworks, right? The one you're
Correct.
going to get, maybe just to keep them honest. And then you decide. I mean, that's something to think about. I think you can avoid the rabbit hole.
Well, for
By-
example, I'll just use it right now because our current fireworks provider is saying we need to, it'd be advised to get into your fireworks show, whoever that company is right now, because the tariffs that are coming on those could increase and double the cost of it real easily, which we don't want to have happen, obviously.
So this does give the administrator the ability to waive it if it's in the village's best interest. So if I had any department come to me and say, Todd, can we waive this? I would probably ask questions like, what, are there other bidders? What are the disadvantages or advantages to going to RFP? Are there timing circumstances or is there some sort of emergency? Those are the type of things just thinking off the top of my head, logical questions I would ask whoever is asking me for that waiver. I think you brought up at least a point, if not more than one point, on why I might determine that to be in the village's interest to proceed as you're doing now. And that relates to timing and unusual circumstances about tariffs. So in that case, it ends up being deferred to the administrator to sort of pass that judgment. And I would proceed with sort of a managerial exercise to think that through.
Perfect.
You should check that, yeah. You should check. That's for professional services.
Professional services.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
with that, go ahead.
so I'm gonna ask one further process that would go on, and that is, should the board be approving that? Because it is outside the parameters of this policy. And it gets to the point of who carries more weight, the board or Todd and because it does go outside the parameters, shouldn't the board be responsible for it? Yes, we agree that this is okay to accept that. Just a question. And second of all, just thinking out loud here, Renee, is this some other type of fund we can set up? Because I heard a lot about donations. Is there some kind of fund, special government fund policy or program we could set up in the non-major governmental fund category that all the stuff is accounted for? So we know the gross donations, we know the expenses. Here's the net revenue or loss, whatever it is. Just trying to think outside the box here a little bit. And I don't know if that helps this cause or not, but and when it comes to stepping outside the realm of a policy, I guess to me, that's the board's responsibility, not the administrator. Sorry, Todd.
You don't have to apologize to me. It's not, the contract itself comes through the village board for authorization to execute.
I mean, it really goes through the Boom committee. So it says the committee or the village board for approval. And then you execute the contract.
Yeah.
So-
I guess my point to Al in terms of I don't necessarily care what the village board does because it's a matter of policy for them. Is the board interested in hiring someone who they're willing to put that trust in for expediency, operational flow, et cetera? If so, and that's the policy of the board, great. If they wish for more control to be existing within the 7-member village board, that's fine too. I frankly don't care. So that it's a policy issue that they can consider.
Tom?
I think the policy as written is something they'd be able to work with for what your proposal is. You just have to talk it through and then follow the procedures. And if you're wise to try and get it taken care of and locked in right away. If Al didn't have any more questions on it, I'm just ready to move that we recommend approval of the policy as written.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Jack Heineman. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay. Third one, we have discussed potential changes to budget policies.
Okay. So this one, I'm not expecting any recommendations or action tonight. So if we do run out of time, we can take this up because I'm just trying to get some feedback, some dialogue going about this so that, maybe I can work on policy changes if we feel that they're necessary. That would ultimately be come through as part of the budget process and through finance and then through the village board. Jack, you had asked a little bit about our policy of 20 to 25% of our unassigned fund balance. And why have we been over that? And what discussions have been had? So I think it was, I don't remember if it was last year or the year before. We did ask the village board if they wanted to make a change, first of all, right off the top in the policy. Either, perhaps raising that higher threshold, because again, we've been around the, say, an average of 28% for a number of years. The village board did not take any action at that time. They left it at 20 to 25%. But then, Al and others have brought it up, should we have a policy on what to do with that excess? And I did, I was researching, and the Government Finance Officers Association, who has a lot of best practices for governments, this seemed to fit our situation. If a government chooses to adopt conservative budget estimates and assumptions that consistently result in year-end surpluses, the GFOA recommends that a clear and transparent process be adopted for how those surpluses are utilized. Simplest being, use them for one-time investments as part of the annual budget process. So, that is one option. If we limited ourselves to just using those excesses in the annual budget process. I know there's been times where we've used some of that excess for other things, and it's always come to the village board for approval. That's how we've been typically using it. But some other thoughts and what I have seen elsewhere is, perhaps considering moving some of that excess either to our capital improvements or our equipment replacement fund, because those are tax funded, at least in part. Because some of the concern when we have this excess is, are we overtaxing the current citizens and holding it for future expenses? So, could we move that and then reduce the tax levy for some of those areas? Another one that Chris brought up is, could we start setting aside some funds for a land lease program? So I just kind of wanted to have some dialogue here on what people might consider for using those funds, or if we want to leave it how it is, or that.
To be clear, potential land lease.
Oh,
fund.
did I,
It was just an option that we talked
Potential.
about, maybe.
yeah.
That
So
could be-
these were just some things that came off the top of my head, and Chris mentioned the one.
So yeah, I mean, in the past, we had a lot of different things that we've used. We tried to always focus on it being a one-time expense versus something that was continuous that was going on. So I know that we worked with the school district one year when we had to redo the tennis courts. Funds were used for the tennis courts to be redone that year. We didn't plan for it, but it needed to be done because it was a little bit of a disaster on the courts. So I think it's interesting when we looked at the 20 to 25 or with ours, and then we were seeing other communities at 38 and 39% that they're holding. So our policy is definitely not a high policy that we're looking at with that. But it's something I think that, merits our discussion to make sure that we're doing what's best for our taxpayers. And they're getting the best value for what we're taxing them for. So that's where this all is from. And I know Kristen and I have had some discussions about this as well. So your input's important as we look at this policy before it gets to the village board. Al, you got a lot of things to say, I can tell. So you're going to go second. Okay.
It's okay.
So Tom, I'm going to throw this one at you first. And if you don't have anything to say, then we know Al's going to take some time, which is good.
And I'm fine letting other, I will be happy to, move my time to others
Okay,
in this situation, because I know we're going to be running up a time frame here. And this,
6. So we have a half hour
Yeah, we have a half hour.
to go through this. So we can come back to you if you have something after all the rest. All right, Al, go ahead.
So let me go back to the graph that Jack initially asked a question on. Oops. And you know, from my perspective, to get a number and then say, here's what others are doing is not a fair comparison because there are differences on how we all account for that number. So when we talk about the village having a 30.5% fund balance as opposed to a 40.2 or 38.1 or whatever it is, I don't know what the other 40.2 and 38.1 and 37.7 mean because we have a fair amount of our fund balance assigned. So to me, it's all one big happy bucket. And I'd like to see in the same format, what other municipalities within this definition have for signed and unassigned balance to get some further justification as to whether or not we are high and low in relation to the data that he's presenting here. The GFOA recommends 2 months worth of expenses as a general fund balance or 16.7%. So that's even lower than what the village has adopted of 20 to 25%. And I'm okay using a floating percent for the fund balance as opposed to just saying a blank 20 to 25 because things change over time. So, you know, I'm okay with it floating based on the expenditure goes up. I understand. Then perhaps that reserve's got to go up. I understand all that. So I don't necessarily understand the context of this because it only gives a number when there are a couple other things that come into play. But stepping back and Renee, you alluded to the fact, and this is going a comment that's directed to the village board members here. And that is, as a taxpayer, when I see that the budget was expecting to have a 1.1 negative balance in revenue minus expenditures and negative, it was the intent of the village board to dip into that reserve by $1.1 million when in fact they're adding $300,000. So there's a $1.4 million difference between what was budgeted and what actually happened. And I'll get to that in just a little bit. So when I look at, that's almost a 10% variance. So is that too conservative? And I understand the reasons why you want to come through and you don't want to go negative or you do better than the budget. I understand all of that. But from a taxpayer, you know, the $1.4 million difference, which represents 10% of the revenue collected, is that being too conservative? And so when I look at that and I look at the fund balance as to where it's at and all the assigned and unassigned, you know, again, I'm not here necessarily to be critical of the board, other than perhaps when I look at my eyes from that of a taxpayer and I see a 10% over collection of revenue of $1.4 million, is that tolerable? And is that in the definition of being conservative within the policy? And I have to admit, when I got to the policy and trying to look for it here, you know, I know Renee, you took a stab at it and we'll probably take, but it says conservative, but realistic, but then there's another that says cautious or something like that. So it's two words that say it's going to be conservative, cautious, but realistic. Well, you kind of you're fighting yourself in that sense there a little bit as to what it is the board truly wants for purposes of the budgeting process. And for me, I don't like to be conservative. I like to be realistic. And I understand that, yeah, 5% interest or 4% interest. Okay. The license and permits he mentioned, I understand it came in higher than expected because we kind of know what's coming on board with some of that kind of stuff. So I guess my point is, as I've said many times, it just seems like we need to define what is conservative and is the 10% tolerable when it comes to being conservative in the estimates. So that's my spiel.
Yeah, and I will say, yeah, licenses and permits, is building permits typically, which has a corresponding expense that's higher.
Yeah.
So, so it's a little hard, yeah, just to look at these things in isolation.
Yes.
Because the $1 million or $1.4 million swing that it looks like, those are not, certainly not all tax revenues, as well. So,
Yep.
but yes, I understand that point.
Okay, Jack?
I guess one of the things, you know, as you look at this, these are reserves and we've done better. If we look at, kind of our long range vision, you know, do we take these dollars and, maybe bring a project forward? You know, to bring us back into what the original policy is, set out to do. So if we're positive, you know, do we move a road project forward, or do we, you know, buy that piece of equipment? Because if we buy it today, it's probably going to be less than if we waited, you know, 2 to 3 years from now. So, you know, is there some creative ways that we can look at our planning process and say, okay, bring something forward to put us back to where we need to be?
Renee, what would 5% look like off the 28.9 to take us into policy? Kind of almost into the middle. Is that in dollar terms what we're looking at there?
Well, what I did write down was, so we're at 28.9% to get down to 25%. Is that your question, perhaps?
In essence,
Well,
yeah.
that is about $540,000 of spending.
So if you doubled that for about $1 million to get in the middle, is that accurate way to doing that?
You're saying am I being on the witness stand? Are you saying does 540 plus 540 equal 1,80,000? Yes,
Yes.
it does.
I'm looking at trying to get it that we're inside the 20.
Inside.
You're at 25 there, so I'm looking at
Yeah,
4% down. So
I see
take
what
4
you're
more.
Trying
I'm
to
just
do there.
extrapolating out to be double and we'd still be within policy. So about $1 million is what we're talking about.
So again, the board can do what they want, but from my perspective, I am not in favor of using this money. I believe that as a taxpayer, if I use that road over its useful life, I should be paying for that road over its useful life. I shouldn't be charging today's taxpayers for that road. Now, that's kind of a bad example because we got a foundation there already built in, and that's okay. But to bring an expense into 1 year and say, we're going to use this fund, well, now you've overtaxed those folks because the benefit of that asset's going to be over 20 years. But you charge me today for that asset. So I always like to say, in my mind, okay, we're going to spend something. It has a useful life. And we talked about depreciation, all that kind of stuff, which makes sense. But it has a useful life of 20 years. Why are you charging today's taxpayers the full boat when it's going to last 20 years? And everybody who comes after me is going to enjoy the benefits of whatever that is.
Go ahead, Jack.
You know, I guess one of the things, you know, I've been around municipal government quite a bit. And I see, you know, at least from an equipment standpoint, you know, we say a piece of equipment has a useful life of 15 years and we're patching and, you know, our people are doing a great job keeping these products up. But, you know, they're keeping that beyond the useful life. So, you know, is it something where, you know, if we are above, do we say, okay, we want to get more efficient equipment? You know, maybe, you know, from the road standpoint, I understand your position, you know, that it's a 20-year, 30-year life. And why should we tax, you know, the future? But I also understand what government does to, you know, because budgets are tight. And if we look at some of our equipment that may be out of its useful life and dedicate some of those dollars there, it might, I don't know if that solves your issue, but.
Yep. Yes.
Okay, Paul?
Yeah, maybe a question regarding the budgeting aspect of it. Where we sit right now, would we have to show a deficit essentially to get us back? So if we were not to have any special projects at all and get the balances back below the policy limit, would we have to show a deficit to begin with, right? So just planning. And would that be a negative impact on the community is one. Two, where we at and where we stand today, does it make more sense to allocate those funds to better the community, right? Or is it to figure out the budgeting aspect of this, right? To get back where we need to be?
So just one comment about that. So that's, where you saw the usage of the fund balance that on a few slides earlier than this. That's kind of what we try and do every year is, look at the budget. What are some one-time items that we can use the fund balance to kind of bring it down and, at the same time, relieve the taxpayer, the levy there. So I think we're doing some of that to an extent, but you bring up some good comments.
Sarah?
In between Paul and Al.
You are?
No, no. No, like, you just take, take me last. No, I agree with both what Al and Paul said, that if we could adjust the budget slightly, but I also agree that this should go to the people paying taxes today, not like, yeah. They covered everything when I.
Kristen?
Yeah, so I'm gonna say something Tom said. I'm gonna steal your comments. Is that all right?
Okay, I got another one.
Yeah, all right, cool. That's good. So, one of the things to buying equipment now or paying down something now is that we do avoid interest charges, which, benefits taxpayers today as well as tomorrow's taxpayers. But I do see your point. We have this conversation frequently about, are we taxing today's taxpayers for tomorrow's expenses? I think it's an important conversation that we have routinely because this is part of our responsibility and our role. I also see the difficulty in predicting in a growing village from one year to the next what the tax is actually going to be, how much we collect. People build houses bigger than we expected and, a couple years in a row, and suddenly we projected taxes being here and they're above that. So this is kind of that constant balancing game. Yeah, so it's a good problem to have. Let's be clear. We're happy to have this issue versus some others. This is some of my
Tom,
comments.
is there anything that Kristen didn't say already that she stole from you?
Just that one comment.
Yeah.
He's got more.
Okay, so I like what you try to do with your language that you put in here, just to try be realistic.
Yeah, and that was
That's-
just the most minor
It's-
things. I
it's
mean,
minor and but
the
I-
discussion is what I wanted
yeah,
to hear more
but
on.
when it may be minor, but the idea is that you're trying to move away from just being so conservative.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing is true with maybe some of your estimates on income. You're looking at past amounts of money that the village has collected for permits and licenses and for interest income, and you're trying to extrapolate what that might be. But then again, something happens, there's building continues. It doesn't lower like a lot of people expected it to do. And you're still building homes like crazy, right? So your income's gonna go up. There's not much you can do about that, and good for us. I really don't have a problem with that total, that 25%. My concern, and it's gonna show just a little bit of Tom Wilson conservancy, looking at too many things at the same time. A lot of communities in Dane County are having not this trouble. They're having trouble with running up against their levy limits. And what do? And we're talking here about, let's take our money and put it towards something. Well, I don't know the exact situation that the village is in. I think it's pretty good, in running up against our levy limits. It might be a while, if ever. Other communities have had strategic planning to deal with, how are we going to deal with things like this? What will we do with this money if we want to, from a board perspective, to get it down? What should we spend it on? What should we think about? Even take comments from people. I think that's one thing that that the village board needs to think about is, are we running up against levy limits? Will this help us in the long run? If we don't ever have to worry about that, well, more power to us, but I don't know that that's gonna happen. $550,000 above this limit could happen easy. And then where are you? So I think I'm trying to see different things. I don't have any problem if the board wanted to put money towards, even a loan that's been taken out for some capital equipment to lower the interest that's going to be paid over a while. I don't have any problem with that. I don't have any problem with some of the comments you came up with, different things that you could put it towards, use it for different workforce housing projects or something like that. Sure. But I think the first thing that I'm hoping you all have, but I don't think this body knows where you are when it comes to levy limits and what we might be looking at in a few years. And that's something that you certainly should have a grip on and know. And maybe it's not a bad idea that the village board has decided to run above the 25%, just for that purpose.
And I just want to comment on that. So our next finance committee meeting, which will probably be in August or September, we're going to address the topic because the Ellers is going to present our 10-year financial management plan. And as part of that, it shows where we are and will be at with our levy limit. And I'm going to also invite the board members if they want to sit in the audience and listen to that. Because it's been a while since Ellers presented. I mean, we update that every year. But then we will see kind of where we're at, and that might then, change this discussion or maybe not. But
Well, but Renee, I mean, the fact of the matter is you're seeing Fitchburg, Monona,
Right, yep.
Madison, those.
I mean, it's
suburbs,
eventually
all
going to
these
happen to
communities.
us as well.
And they didn't have this, or it could be Monona Grove School District that did have this. Oops. It just got used like immediately. So
Controls again in that case.
well, that is true.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is true. But so it's something, we can talk about this all we want, about how we want to lower this or not, but maybe the fact of the matter is we got to ask that one question. Why? If we're looking at all what the other communities are looking at, should we even be talking about this? Maybe this is a good thing. That's my comment, Chris.
I'm not sure why you're yelling at me, Tom, but thank you for your
I
comments.
usually do.
Within that, any other comments from people? Otherwise, I have one still. Go ahead.
I do have one comment and this, I want to state that this is a positive discussion.
Yeah.
I'm glad we're in this position. This is contrary to a number of municipalities. So we're in a great spot, due to a great team, that we do have. I just would like to see things a little tighter in some areas. That's my only spot. So that's it.
Okay, so you stole mine now from, like Kristen stole Tom's, but I'll just go a step further because I know that you've been in finance a long time here on the committees, probably longer than everybody here.
5 years.
So within these policies, I think the village has taken a very strong stance of we want to have the best community we can have and be responsible with the dollars that we're using. And we've been doing that consistently for a long time. And we were part of, I think everybody's lived here since then, a time where we got to go through being ranked a top place to raise a family in the country, not just in the state, but in the country. And we got dinged for one thing. Does anybody know what that one thing was? Our library was poor. And what happened right after that? We have a top 100 architecturally designed library in the world, not the country, in the world. So I think we've been very good stewards. I think the boards before, the finance committees before have been very good stewards with our funds. And the policies that we've had in place have served the village really well. We didn't really even talk about that we have our borrowing thing self-imposed at 50%. So from a borrowing perspective, we're keeping things good there. We could spend more if we chose to as a board on different things out there in the community. And our policy would probably change a little bit again then with this if we had more debt. Not to scare Renee like I did when we talked about pool funding and certain things during a stretch there where it was going to cause us to go over that 50%. The library was actually supposed to cause us, and you know what? Our policy, we ended up just touching it maybe and receding right away. So we have our budget lined up that if we have things like that, we generally have the room to get it done. And if we don't, we might have to wait a year or two, but I think we've been very conservative, might be the wrong word, with how our approach has been, but the approach has worked. So that's my only comment. I think that's what you were looking for tonight was
Yeah, I
from this
think,
body.
I'll take this and like I said, we're gonna have another discussion on, our 10-year plan and where we're at and levy limits. So maybe we can, revisit these at our next meeting, which I will get scheduled here coming up. Like I said, it'll probably be August or September for that.
But I think the discussion is great. I mean, this is getting people's input is super important. Yeah, Jack.
I guess one of the things as we change these policies, could you provide a red line just so that we know where we were to what the new policy is?
Yeah.
So I did a red line for the budget one because it was just a couple words here and there. The reason I didn't, I did not for the capital asset and the purchasing policy because they were so vastly different. I probably should have put the old policy in, but I didn't even redline it. I just sort of put it to the side, started fresh, and then just made sure it brought in all of our things. So, but yes, in terms of this budgeting, as we keep discussing it, yep, I'll continue with the red line.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
I think they considered that a 30-year refresher is what she was working at there. So thank you. All right, our last item is discuss and take action on preliminary 2026 budget process and calendar.
Well, my papers are all out of order, but essentially, the finance committee usually just discusses, oh, here I found it, the budget calendar process. And so I kept it pretty much very similar to last year. In the past few years, the department heads are currently working on their stuff in July. September, Todd and I start to, pull it all together and talk to departments if we need to. And then the October 20th is when we would have that joint meeting with the finance committee and the village board.
Six.
That would be at 6 o'clock on the 20th. And that was again, just to sort of facilitate the discussion and have everybody hearing it all at the same time. Then I get it into the paper right after that. We have the additional meeting on the first meeting in November where we invite the public for extra, emphasis on the budget for comments. So we have time to work those into the budget. And then the second meeting in November is when we would have the formal public hearing. And then the board would look to adopt the budget that night. So
Would those both be joint too, starting?
So the finance committee hasn't historically been joint. I mean, anybody is of course welcome to come. It's just the October meeting that we convene the finance committee for.
Okay. Sure. Yeah.
But unless anybody has concerns with this, I think it's worked pretty well. I will send out the date for that October meeting now. And like I said, I'll be scheduling the other meeting with Ellers shortly. So.
Perfect. So we'd look for a motion then to approve the budget calendar as presented, and I'm going to make that motion.
Second.
And we have a second from Tom Wilson. Any other comments? Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Yeah.
Nobody's opposed. All right.